Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
There'll be a brief ad at the end of the video. Now, David sent me this story, and this is something that's been tried in a couple of different states. It hasn't worked out very good for the states passing these laws, but we're talking about here is a buffer law. Louisiana recently passed a 25-foot buffer law, and the case against it is now in front of a federal judge. And so what the law says is that if you encounter a police officer and he looks at you and goes, "Hey, stop where you are and back up so that you and I are 25 feet apart." If you don't back up or stay out of that 25-foot zone, you can be arrested. And so there's a lot going on here. We'll talk about it. But it's also one of the shortest laws I've ever seen. So a federal judge, by the way, Drew Costley wrote this for the LAilluminator.com. LA in this context is Louisiana. A federal judge in Baton Rouge is now considering a case in a challenge to a new state law that makes it a criminal offense to knowingly or intentionally come within 25 feet of a working police officer after being ordered or asked to step back. So in other words, if a police officer walks up to you and starts asking you questions, you don't have to run away and get 25 feet away from them. It's only if they order you or tell you that they want you to do that. So attorneys representing news organizations with a footprint across Louisiana have asked the judge to declare the law a violation of the First and 14th Amendments of the U.S. Constitution and to issue a preliminary injunction that would stop the state from enforcing the law. Attorneys for the state want the judge, of course, to dismiss the case. Now, the governor signed the bill into law back in May, and on July 31st, the day before the law was set to go into effect, a group of news organizations filed this action to stop the law from being enforced. The judge has not yet ruled, and the Louisiana law follows similar efforts in other states to limit how close someone can be to a law enforcement officer. Lawmakers in Arizona and Indiana passed similar laws, but federal judges have blocked both of those from being enforced. Florida legislators also passed a similar bill, which is set to go into effect next year. These buffer laws are a trend that's cropping up across the country, and they seem to be an effort to get around First Amendment rights to document what police officers do in public, says a staff attorney with Reporters Committee for the Freedom of the Press, speaking to Verite News. The Reporters Committee, along with Louisiana attorneys, are representing the plaintiffs. The attorneys argue, in addition to violating First Amendment rights, the law also violates the 14th by failing to uphold people's due process and equal protection rights because the language of the law is too vague. And that, of course, is what happens when you write a really, really short statute. You might go, "Steve, I like the idea of a short statute. It's easier to understand." Well, yeah, but it also has to do things with such broad strokes that you do get vagueness. They argued the law fails to tell people what conduct is prohibited, fails to give adequate warning of the buffer being created, and encourages arbitrary and discriminatory enforcement. Now, a civil rights attorney from New Orleans who is not involved in the case told Verite News it was very concerning to watch the bill become law. It did not seem to be solving a problem that exists in Louisiana. Louisiana already has a law that makes it a crime to interfere with the law enforcement investigation, and so I didn't see how an additional law was needed to address any existing problem, which raised the concern for me that this was intended to restrict free speech rights. He said the law could have the effect of restricting all sorts of perfectly legal and constitutional activity, such as a photojournalist taking a photo of a newsworthy event, people at a place who just happen to be near police officers, or protesters demonstrating. Now, the state has responded. The governor's office didn't respond specifically to requests for comment on this story, but a press secretary referred Verite to a post that she made on the social platform X, formerly known as Twitter, about the case in August, saying the law is a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction that ensures law enforcement can do their jobs without threat or obstruction by others. We have had several incidents where police officers were injured while carrying out their lawful duties, protecting the community, and attempting to restore order. I look forward to defending this reasonable response to documented interference with law enforcement. And as you might guess, and again, I didn't look this up, but I don't need to, I suspect it's already against the law to injure a police officer who's doing his work, or her work, but I could be wrong. Verite asked her office for more details on the incidents involving officer injuries, but did not immediately receive a response from her office. And that's one of the things where they go, "We've got examples of this." Okay, let's hear them. Silence. Attorneys for the state said in October that the case should be dismissed because the plaintiffs can't show actual harm has been or will be caused by the law. The law had not been enforced against the plaintiffs or their employees, and that they're all entitled to sovereign immunity. But the sovereign immunity might protect them from being personally liable for these things. And obviously, you don't sue a legislator because they passed a law, but you file the lawsuit to challenge the law. So the law can get challenged with or without the immunity. It doesn't matter. So the general counsel for the National Press Photographers Association has also been a photojournalist and a uniformed reserve deputy sheriff in Erie County for over 40 years. He told Verite News that he thinks law enforcement officers are entitled to enforce reasonable restrictions, but he said those restrictions can't be arbitrary. Why 25 feet? Why not 24? Why not 26? Why not do it in meters? Let's confuse everybody. Let's call it 8 meters. He said, for example, that an officer could reasonably ask someone to step back 2 or 3 feet because to keep them far enough away to prevent that person from taking a service weapon. Another scenario he gave is that officers could block off a 5-block radius during an active shooter situation. But the restrictions have got to be based on the totality of the circumstances. It can't be an arbitrary distance. The law becomes even more complicated, he said, at an event like a demonstration or a protest. He said the concept of a 25-foot buffer law, which is similar to the one that was passed and blocked in Indiana, turns logic on its head. Let's say you back up from one officer and then get closer to another. Is everybody going to run around with tape measures? It's unworkable. So I'm going to first quickly show you that the statute itself, like I said, is literally one of the shortest things I've ever seen in my life as far as statutes go. Act number 259 from the regular session, House Bill number 173, and it says it's an act relative to offenses affecting law enforcement, et cetera, et cetera. Here's what it says. Approaching a peace officer lawfully engaged in law enforcement duties. A, no person shall knowingly or intentionally approach within 25 feet of a peace officer who is lawfully engaged in the execution of his official duties after the peace officer has ordered the person to stop approaching or to retreat. B, for the purposes of this section, peace officers shall include all individuals as defined by another section of statute that talks about police officers. C, it shall be an affirmative defense to this crime if the defendant can establish that the lawful order or command was neither received nor understood by the defendant, nor capable of being received or understood under the conditions and circumstances that existed at the time of the issuance of the order. So, if you couldn't hear the command, or you didn't say it loud enough, that might do it. D, whoever violates the provisions of this section shall be fined not more than $500, imprisoned for not more than 60 days, or both. So that's it. The whole law contains basically 4 sentences, and basically it boils down to 25 feet, but they've got to tell you that. And then if they tell you that and then you don't follow it, you have then violated Section D, which means it is in fact a $500 fine or 60 days or both. And so there's a lot going on here, and you can think of situations where the law makes sense, and you can think of situations where the law doesn't make sense. So I know what you're going to say. You're going to say, Steve, give us an example where it doesn't make sense. Okay, where that law does not make sense. And you say, okay, police officer pulls a car over, and there's a sidewalk over here. Sidewalk's probably not 25 feet from the car that's been pulled over. And so someone standing 20 feet away on the sidewalk with a camera who takes a photograph of that isn't a threat to anybody in that circumstance. And so to suggest that, no, back up 5 more feet. And by the way, is it measured from the police officer or from the scene? Because the police officer's on the other side of the car, then it'd be 25 feet from the... Now you see this, right? 25 feet from the police officer. So when the police officer walks back to his car, that means you can walk closer to the... Then you can do this if you have to. And again, who's carrying tape measures? And on the other hand, let's suppose that something really bad happens at a school. And they evacuate the school. And all the children have been evacuated, let's say, to the back playing field. There's a football field out back. All the kids have been evacuated out back. And you're a journalist, and you catch wind of the fact that there is something going on. It's going to be the biggest news story of the year in this town right now at that school. So you race over to the school, and you park across the street, you got a camera, you got press credentials. You're actually wearing something that says press right on it. And as you're walking across the street and yanking out your big cameras to start taking pictures, a police officer holds up his hand and goes, hey, stop. This entire property out here is a crime scene. We're in the process of putting up tape, but we haven't got it put up yet. But my job is to keep everyone off of it because the person we're looking for that did whatever it is that caused the kids to be evacuated came in this way and went out this way, and we're pretty certain that things got dropped. So this is an active crime scene investigation. This entire yard is, right? And journalist goes, no, I'll stay 25 feet from you, but I'm going to walk around here and take pictures. And so you can see why there might be a situation where it might not be just 25 feet that a police officer needs you to stay out of, okay? And so you can see where it becomes very, very situational dependent. It depends on the situation, the facts, circumstances, the totality of the circumstances. And you hear that phrase a lot when they talk about the totality of the circumstances. And it is confusing in the sense that I've seen videos on YouTube where a police officer is doing something and someone walks right up to them and starts talking to the police officer. And the police officer goes, excuse me, I'm dealing with this right here. Can you step back? Now, this person doesn't need to step back 25 feet to stay out of this transaction. Under this law, they do. They got to go back 25 feet. And as the other people have pointed out, there's all kinds of other oddities here. So let's suppose there's 10 police officers milling about at a place, county fair, and a police officer starts talking to somebody, and let's suppose it's a friend of yours, and you're just standing there, hey, what's going on here? Police officer goes, hey, you, back 25 feet. So now as you're backing up 25 feet, you're approaching another police officer over there. Now, to be fair, that officer would have to tell you to back up 25 feet, at which point I guess you'd have to back up that way. It becomes three-dimensional. But you can see why there's a problem here. Now, if they have a law on the books, and many states do, I suspect most states do, that says that you cannot interfere with a police officer doing their duty, then the question becomes, what is interference? Because if you're simply standing there quietly, 15 feet away with a camera, and you're either taking pictures or you're recording, whatever you're doing, nowadays you've got to do several things with your hands to indicate photograph, and then, of course, just filming. Not like this, people, like this. It looks better on YouTube. If you're 15 feet away doing that, you're not interfering with anything. However, if you're 15 feet away and you're screaming at the top of your lungs to where the two people can't hold a conversation, that could be interference. And so it's going to be more fact dependent. And so simply saying, no, we're going to draw this 25-foot radius, and an officer can command you to get out of it. And boom, there you go, 25 feet. I can see that being struck down because of the fact that it is so random. And like I said, I can imagine quite easily circumstances where 25 feet is more than enough, and also where 25 feet is not enough. And so you know as well as I do that when the news reporter approaches the school in my hypothetical and the officer says, get back, he's not going to say get back 25 feet. He's going to say get off this property, regardless of where I'm standing. If I'm the only officer there, he could say, well, no, I can stay 25 feet from you. No, because we need you to stay out of the crime scene. So, the law, like I said, is very simple. It's very short. And I do admire that on one hand. But there should be some exceptions in here explaining some of these other things. Because there might be circumstances where, 25 feet is more than enough. So again, it's Act 259, and the meat of it is, no person shall knowingly or intentionally approach within 25 feet of a peace officer who is lawfully engaged in the execution of his official duties after the peace officer has ordered the person to stop approaching or to retreat. And as an attorney, my brain is always looking at something, testing it from different angles, going, okay, what about this, what about this? Obviously, under this law, you can sneak up on a cop. Because the police officer has not yet told you to stay away 25 feet. And so if he hasn't told you that, you're presumably free to do that. I wouldn't recommend it, but I'm simply pointing out that, you often, writing statutes, you often need to include catch-alls and other things that might clarify this. So again, you can't do this after the peace officer has ordered the person to stop approaching or to retreat. So I also suspect, and this is the thing, virtually everything police do nowadays is caught on body cameras. Okay, they're wearing body cameras. At least it's it's a subject to body camera recording. Whether it all gets recorded or not, it's another story altogether. But I suspect you're going to have a whole bunch of arguments if this law goes into effect, where people are going to get arrested and they're going to go, "I was 26 feet away." Cops are going to go, "Nope, it's 24 feet away." Did somebody measure it? And you're going to have people literally pulling up stills from body camera on big screens in courtrooms going, okay, the person's standing next to the telephone pole here. And the car is parked over here, and you can see by the crack in the pavement, it's parked here. And so the police officer on the other side of the car, so the width of the car is this, so the police officer is here and this, and we can triangulate this and the hypotenuse this, and that's at 25 feet exactly. And it's going to get like that. It is going to get like that. And if you're facing jail time, yeah, you put up a fight on that, especially if you think you were right. So don't forget, whoever violates the provisions of the section shall be fined not more than $500, imprisoned for not more than 60 days, or both. So that's what's going on in Louisiana. A federal judge will rule, and we'll see what happens. And of course, this is an interesting situation because we've talked before about how different courts have different rulings and then different circuits and so on. I suspect that this law or a law like it will eventually make its way up to SCOTUS. The Supreme Court's going to have to rule on it because it's become such a hot topic in so many different states, and with different cases, having it struck down, one of these days a court's going to uphold it, and then you're going to have a split, and then it's going to have to go up to get resolved at a national level. So there you go. But David, thank you for sending that to me. The story's from the LAilluminator.com, and Drew Costley wrote that. The case against Louisiana's 25-foot buffer law for police goes before a federal judge. We'll see what happens. Questions or comments, put them below. Let's talk to you later. Bye-bye. I told you there'd be an ad at the end of the video. I'm here to talk to you about Factor. And of course, Factor makes meeting your nutrition goals easier than ever by delivering fresh, never frozen, dietitian-approved meals right to your doorstep. The team of gourmet chefs create each meal using only ingredients with integrity to help you feel your best all day long. And there's a few things that I want to make sure people understand about Factor. The food is good, but it is extremely simple to prepare. And as I like to do, I'm going to show you what I went through when I got the box, opened it up, and made the first meal. And that whole process takes about 2 minutes and 20 seconds. But the food itself takes 2 minutes to prepare, and it's good. And here's the thing. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but the days are getting shorter. It's getting dark out early, and that happens in the wintertime. And so I don't know. I mean, I understand that days are 24 hours long, right? We they haven't actually shortened the days, but they feel shorter. And as a result of that, when I got daylight, I don't want to burn it doing silly stuff, wasting my time. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time making meals if I've got more important things to do, but I still want to eat well. So despite the fact that days seem shorter, guess what? Save some time by doing the Factor thing, and 2 minutes and 1 second later, you're eating. And like I said, I'll demonstrate that down here in the corner. So they take the stress out of meal planning. They set you up for success. You can skip the grocery stores, the prep work, the cooking fatigue, and get this chef-crafted, dietitian-approved meals delivered right to your door. It's amazing. It's a sign of the times in which we live. Modern marvels and wonders and all that. They've got over 35 meals to choose from per week, and you can go with options and categories like keto, calorie smart, vegan and veggie, and so on. And so you can go through and choose, pick and choose. So I encourage you to go to the website and take a look at what you can get. Window shop, just window shop. Look at what you can get. And of course, if you sign up, you can get yourself a good deal. Head to factor75.com or click the link below and use the code 50 Lehto's Law to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50 Lehto's Law at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. So it's a service that, I keep saying this, it's like they designed it for me. They understood that, hey, Steve is a guy. He'd like to eat well, but he hasn't got time. And I will admit, I sometimes rely too much on fast food or carry out or takeout, as they call it in some places. And you find yourself going, I haven't got any time to prepare. I'll just stop and pick something up. And number one, it can get expensive. Number two, that fast food's not always the best for you. And I don't know why, but I often feel myself kind of wishing I hadn't done the fast food thing after I've done it. So I would stress that one solution, a great solution, is Factor. So you can skip that overpriced takeout trap. Factor is cheaper and it tastes better. And that's one of the things I got to also stress is the variety of stuff they send you. I'm going to read to you what came out of the box that you saw me unpack on screen just a moment ago, okay? So you've got yourself your black pepper and sage pork chop. Now, I understand that if I wanted to, I could probably sit down, figure out how to make that, go to the store, buy the ingredients, make it, bumble through the process, and if I did everything right, it would taste good, and then I got a half hour of cleanup. And I ain't got that kind of time, especially with the shorter days. Pesto, bacon, and tomato chicken bake. That was good. Another one here, peanut Buddha bowl. Roasted veggie and pesto tortellini. Again, glad I love the tortellini. Chicken piccata. Gotta love that. And the Tex-Mex beef bowl. So a good variety, a good assortment. I always tell them, just send me an assortment. I trust you. Send me an assortment, and I'll see what happens. And, of course, I love them all. They taste great. So you can go in, though, like I said, and choose different options and set it up, how many you want, what categories you want, or specific meals. You can set all this stuff up any way you want it. That's the other cool thing about it is that you can go in and set this all up the way that you want to do it for your dietary needs. However it is that you want to eat, you can set it up, and they'll customize it for you. So it's an amazing service. Like I said, it's almost as if somebody up there said, you know what Steve really needs? He needs someone to prepare these meals for him, deliver them, put them in his hands, so that all he's got to do is take one out, poke holes in the plastic, and stick it in the microwave for 2 minutes. And I demonstrated on camera because even if you heard me say it, you might not believe that it's that easy, and it is, in fact, that easy, but the food is good. That's the other thing, and I think you know me well enough, I wouldn't be out here plugging it if it wasn't. So again, head to factor75.com or click the link below. Use code 50, Lehto's Law, to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first Factor box. That's code 50, Lehto's Law, at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Questions or comments, put them below. Otherwise, talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. No amount of regretting can change the past, and no amount of worrying can change the future.